Yeah, see, because if I go like this, it kind of cuts into my head a little bit. Welcome back to the D3 Datacast. I'm Zach. He's Matt. And while the weather may not know what time of year it is, the calendar does not lie. And we have finally reached Division III basketball season. And of course, all eyes of the nation will be on Division III basketball Tuesday night. Even the NBA is taking the night off as Division III basketball gets underway. Welcome, Matthew. How was your week in hashtag D3 Hoops?
Well, happy D3 Hoops Eve to you as well. I had a good D3 week. If we wanted to stretch the definition of week a little bit, on Saturday the 29th, I was able to go to an exhibition game as Calvin played up about an hour north of here in Big Rapids and played Ferris State Division II team there. So that was fun to get my first look at the squad, to be in person for Division III basketball for the first time since we were at the Final Four together down in Fort Wayne watching Randolph-Macon be crowned champions. So it was good to get the practice game under my belt as a fan, as a watcher, to make sure that my bleacher sitting form is in correct shape, and I think I knocked it out of the park. So I did well on that one. The team looks fun, interesting, young. So we'll have to see what comes of the Calvin Knights. But yeah, besides that, watched a few exhibition games or portions of exhibition games on streams, the streams that were available online. Followed a few scores. So some interesting things happening, but I'm ready for games to start for real.
So is your halftime snacking in mid-season form? Did you go with popcorn or maybe an ice cream bar? What was the choice here?
I did not snack at all, so I have a lot of ramping up to do for the season. Yes.
Yeah, that game that you mentioned, you were there. Me living on the other side of the state, I was relegated to watching a box score refresh,
Yeah.
uh, because there was no live stream from Ferris State, and also just being interested in seeing some of the fresh faces that Kelvin has coming in, especially in an exhibition season against a higher level opponent. Just it was really interesting to see how they would do. But of course, there was no video, so I was watching a box score refresh and getting some messages from you to see how that actually looked in person. But reflecting on that, it just made me think that we really should not take for granted how accessible watching a lot of games in Division III is, whether it's teams streaming through YouTube or some of the other apps that are out there. It's just really nice that they're so accessible. And I know there's sometimes some criticism of teams playing games, or for whatever reason, you can't find an archive stream, but it seems like pretty much any game you want to watch live, you're able to, and that's obviously not something that happens in Division II, and then obviously in Division I, you're getting into television contracts and things like that, where the whole dynamic's different. But it was a good reminder that we have great accessibility in Division III if we want it there, and we shouldn't take it for granted.
Yeah, shouts to all the athletic departments in Division Three that make that happen. We've come a long way in streaming in Division Three. I remember, 10 years ago or so, if you could find a stream for games, half the time it would be buffering. Just the platforms that are available now for streaming games were not as robust as they were back then. So most of the time you can find a high quality stream um, for almost any Division Three game out there. And as we found out this week, like you said, that's not always the case elsewhere around the country. So we are a little bit spoiled in Division Three, I think, in that way. But it's awesome. It's awesome for us fans, and I know it's a lot of work for the athletic departments to make sure that those are staffed to get someone to shoot the video and whatever else goes into that. But thank you to those people who do that, because that makes our lives easy to watch games and that much more fun to follow teams around the country.
Absolutely. So part of the fun for me too was just we've been putting a lot of effort into planning this show because it's the official start of the regular season. Our previous episodes up to this point have been just with the purpose of getting the show off the ground. Hopefully, they've been entertaining and informational. But now we're going to kind of take a weekly format that'll be routine throughout the season. So we've been working on that, and that's been a lot of fun. And just kind of seeing how this will take shape. Not that it will necessarily always be the same, or that we won't kind of change things along the way. But it's been fun to kind of get into regular season mode and plan this all out, put some slides together. So hopefully we're in for a fun episode here.
I think so. First thing we want to talk about as we head into the season is just kind of a reset, a review of where we are with the efficiency ratings. One of the things we're going to bring up over and over again. We like to talk about computer rankings, whether it's the Massey ratings, whether it's the ratings that I run based on offensive and defensive efficiency. We had an episode early in the season. It might have been our first official episode after our introduction where we talked about the preseason computer ratings and how those come about. So go ahead and watch that episode if you haven't. But I just wanted to put up a comparison here between the top 25 that was released maybe a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago from D3Hoops.com. I forget what the official date on that was. And just compare those to the computer's baseline going into the season. I think this time of year, the voters probably have a better finger on the pulse of the country rather than the computers, which are just looking at the last couple of years of history and then, trying to average those out and saying, here, this is my baseline. So on the screen, hopefully you can see it on YouTube. Left column in yellow is the top 25 ranking, and then in green is where the computer has them to start the season as a baseline. And my takeaway from just putting this together this week was that there's overall, I think, a large amount of agreement between these two systems. And that's probably because a lot of the teams that have been good the last couple of years are probably going to be good this year. There's a couple differences that stand out. I think the notable differences, Trinity, Texas, hanging out there at number 18 in D3Hoops.com. The computers were not super high on them last year. Efficiency ratings coming into this year as a baseline of number 106 in the country. Another one that sticks out is Middlebury at number 14. The voters had them 14, but the computers starting the year have them at number 46. And I think those two teams in particular are returning, I believe, literally everyone from their teams. So whereas other programs are going to have to replace seniors who graduated, players going out, players coming in, these two schools maybe have a chance to just add what was already there. So definitely a case where the voters probably have a better view of that because the computers, at least my computer system, doesn't know anything about individual players. And then other two that maybe stick out to me right away, Mary Hardin-Baylor, number 2 by the voters. They received a couple of first place votes. That was actually 4 first place votes to be exact, whereas the computers were a little bit lower on them last year and then into this season at number 36. They return a preseason All-American in Josiah Johnson, maybe a National Player of the Year candidate. So returning a player like that, you can see why the voters have them pretty high. Maybe the other team I was looking at, Case Western Reserve, number 19 by the voters, number 54 by the efficiency ratings. And my view on them definitely grew as the season went on and into the NCAA tournament where they were pretty impressive. So if they can match that, then they're going to see their computer ranking kind of shoot up here in the first few weeks of the season, probably rather fast as the projection part of the efficiency ratings falls away looking in these first couple of months and the in-season data kind of pulls in. We're going to look at some of those teams, probably come up closer to where the voters have them to start the season.
Yeah, but I like the way you say it. It's a baseline. With no games played, there's no data for a computer-based system to run. So you can either choose to not put anything out, which would be one choice, or to base it on previous year's data. And then over the course of the year, the current year's data will take over at some point.
Yep. And like we said, if you would like a little bit of a further discussion on that, check out our episode. We'll probably link it above and maybe below. I talked about the preseason efficiency ratings and just a little bit more about that process as we go along. We'll bring up the efficiency ratings week by week. Some teams that are maybe on the rise, teams that have maybe fallen out of favor a little bit. But that's kind of the background of what's happening here and what the starting point is for the season. Moving along, though, our next portion of the show for today is going to be kind of our week 1 picks, our week 1 games. And I'll just go through the list here. Each week, we're going to hopefully bring 5 games to you, and Zach and I are going to make picks on these games. We talk throughout the week, and we pick what we think is the most interesting game of the week. And then each of us pick 2 additional games to bring along. Our additional games aren't necessarily the best games or the biggest matchups necessarily. It's just a game that one of us found as interesting, and we're going to pick. We're also going to be doing this against a type of a point spread, the kind of scoring margin that my computer predicts for the game, and we're going to pick against that just to make it a little bit more even or make all the games a little bit maybe more interesting to pick so that there's not just I'm going to take the number 5 team at home over the number 10 team to win. So we're in theory, right, if the computer margin is accurate, if it was the divinely appointed scoring margin, then we should only have a 50-50 chance of getting it right, even if we were really good at what we were doing. So we're going to be picking against that number, and that's what you're going to see on the screen here. So this week's games, November 8th, St. John's, Minnesota against UW La Crosse. St. John Fisher at Hobart. North Central against Dubuque on November 11, and then November 13, Wesleyan against Swarthmore. And then our D3 Datacast game of the week back on November 11 will be Whitworth at Mount Union. So, Zach, heading up to that first game, St. John's at UW La Crosse, who do you like in that game? Actually, I should say that's the computer margin on that is 3.5 points in favor of UW La Crosse.
Right. So I like UW La Crosse in the game overall, but I even like them laying the 3.5 points. So Massey actually has this as a 4.5 point margin. So just there's an additional point in another computer system there. La Crosse is returning All-American Ethan Anderson. He was an All-American last year on the preseason All-American D3hoops.com All-American list this year. This one is basically I like what La Crosse has coming back. Early season game when you've got the best player on the floor. They're playing at home. 3.5 points doesn't feel like a whole lot to lay, so I'll ride with La Crosse.
Yeah, for me, this was a really interesting matchup. It's a matchup I want to see, and it's a really interesting kind of expected scoring margin here at 3.5 points. I ended up going with St. John's, and when I submitted my top 25 ballot, I had these two teams right next to each other. I had UW La Crosse one position ahead of St. John's. I think I might have been one of the high voters on St. John's because I had them at number 11 in the country. But being right next to each other, 3.5 points. That's almost right what you'd expect home court advantage to be. To me, that was maybe just a little bit larger of an advantage than I think we'll see in this game. So I'm going to go St. John's, Minnesota. I think it's going to be right around that line. Like you said, if we were just picking the winner, I would be picking UW La Crosse, but I think St. John's is going to be able to keep this game within a possession, and that's why I'm going to go with them in this one. All right, our next matchup, St. John Fisher plus 1 point at Hobart on November 8th.
Yeah, so this ended up being probably the pick I'm most comfortable with. I'm going with St. John Fisher. You mean forget the point? I'm expecting a straight up win here, even on the road. Part of my process in making these picks was just going through last season stats, rosters, see who's coming back, and so St. John Fisher was a 19 and 7 team last year. Good team. They bring back seven of 8 players who averaged at least 16 minutes per game, including their top 3 scorers. So they were a good team last year, bring back almost everyone. While they have one of their top 8 minutes guys to replace, it wasn't one of their top 3 scorers. So I think St. John Fisher is really poised to be one of those teams that takes where they were last year and improves upon it. Only 1 point. I don't need the +1. I think St. John Fisher wins this one outright.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with St. John Fisher plus the 1 point. I mean, I guess at that point you are pretty much predicting them to win the game outright. But I think this is going to be a sneaky good game. I looked at this game initially and I was all over St. John Fisher, especially getting the 1 point even on the road. But Hobart's not bad. They were just outside the top 100 I think in the Massey ratings last year. To be honest, you I think did a little more roster research on these two teams than I did, so I don't know exactly what they have coming back this year. But it was a good team. I just expect St. John Fisher to be building on what was a good season last year, and I think they're probably going to win this one straight up on the road as well. But I expect a good one, and I would not be altogether shocked if Hobart ended up winning.
Yeah, in general, I love a home underdog. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I started my research on the Hobart side of things. So I was looking and I was like, okay, they've got some, I don't have all the details in front of me at the moment, but they have some guys coming back. And so initially I was like, okay, this is looking like a decent home underdog situation. It's just when I switched to the St. John Fisher side of things, you start going through last season stats and like, okay, this guy's back, this guy's back, this guy, 7 of 8 of their most important players last year all back. So that's when I really switched things and I thought, yeah, this one's going the other way.
Looking at that third game, North Central plus a half a point versus Dubuque. This is, I think, a neutral court game. Where do you see this one, Zach?
Yeah, so we're going from the one I was probably the most comfortable with to the one I'm least comfortable with. Initially, I had Dubuque. I made the change over to the North Central side of things.
About 5 minutes ago, you made the change over to North.
Yeah, thanks for letting me make a last minute adjustment here. So, I mentioned Massey having an additional point in our first pick of the slate. Massey has Dubuque by 1.5 here, so additional point on Dubuque side of things. But I'm still going North Central. Um, like I said, this was the most difficult one. Dubuque is picked to win the American Rivers in the coaches poll. But the CCIW coaches poll came out and it was North Central in second place. And I feel like a lot of the preseason discussion here has been kind of the trio of Elmhurst, Illinois, Wesleyan, Wheaton. You don't really know how it's going to come out, but North Central is kind of the forgotten team in that mix. And then the coaches poll comes out, they're second. You dig into the roster, they've got Matt Hellwig coming back, All-American last year, preseason All-American this year. They returned 4 of 5 players that played at least 20 minutes a game last season. North Central's breaking in a new coach, so some uncertainty there. But at the end of the day, North Central brings a lot back. Again, with an All-American, you expect they're going to have the best player on the floor. Neutral site, you never know how that's going to work, especially with this one's going to be at Carroll, so you've got a CCIW foe. Sometimes those neutral courts turn a little bit against a team like North
Yeah.
Central, but all in all, this was the toughest one for me to pick, but banking on the experience that North Central has coming back, including what I expect to be the top player on the floor, I'll go with North Central.
Yeah, to me, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with Dubuque. This one kind of came down to what was my process during my top 25 preseason voting. I ended up slotting Dubuque in the number 24 spot. North Central was in a grouping with maybe 10 or 15 teams, probably in the middle to top half of that grouping of teams I considered but did not ultimately rank. So I'm thinking neutral court within a half a point. I probably should be taking the team that I ranked above the team that I didn't rank. Otherwise, I should have flip flopped them. Probably going to be a tight one. But I think if Dubuque's the team I think they're going to be coming into the season, then I like them to get that victory, cover that half point over North Central. And then game number 4 here, November 13, Wesleyan, Connecticut, plus 5.5 points at Swarthmore.
Yeah, this is another one. Starting looking at the 5.5 points, compare that to what Massey has. Massey also likes Swarthmore, but has a margin of 2.5, so a 3-point difference there. That's the biggest we're going to see in this slate. Swarthmore is replacing 2 starters from last year, but they bring back 6 of their top 7 scorers, so they've got a lot coming back. Wesleyan loses 5th-team All-American Sam Peak, but they have some experience coming back too, including top 3 and 3-point shots made from last season. So I actually really like Swarthmore. I think they were one of the biggest top 25 snubs in the preseason top 25 poll. This is a case for me where just seeing the 5.5 is a little bit too big. So I will take the points in this case and go with Wesleyan.
Yeah, your reasoning is going to end up being pretty similar to mine. I was one that was fairly high on Swarthmore. I think I gave them a number 19 ranking on my ballot coming into the season. I did not rank Wesleyan. I considered them. They're maybe in that North Central range for me of teams that I didn't rank. Like you said, they have some talent they're missing from last season. But that 5.5 point spread, even though it's at Swarthmore, I just think that game is going to be more in the 3 to 4 points, one possession or two. I mean, I guess 5.5 is technically 2 possessions. But I think in this case, even though I think Swarthmore is ultimately going to win the game, who I would pick to win the game straight up, I think with that large of a cushion, I found myself going a little bit more toward the Wesleyan side of things, and that's where I ultimately ended up, and I'm going to take that pick as well. And then finally, last, our 5th game, our D3 Datacast game of the week, Whitworth +6 at Mount Union.
Yeah, for the game of the week, we've got Timken Gymnasium. Sorry, Worcester fans, this is the other Timken Gymnasium, the one at Mount Union, where this game will be taking place. So I've got that for the background today. Yeah, this is one where picking against this efficiency margin spread is important because I do like Mount Union very strongly straight up. They may be one of the more veteran teams in all Division III basketball this year. I do expect them to win, but 6 is getting to be a little bit big for me. Whitworth, if you go through what they're losing from last year, they do have a lot of minutes to replace. But they do return their leading scorer and all four players who shot at least 40% from 3-point range last year. So I feel like they at least have a returning group there that could, keep this pretty competitive. So looking at a number like 6 is just a little bit too big for me. I'll go with the Road Pirates.
You're right that 6 is a big number in a game that could be as even as this one. However, I'm pretty high on Mount Union. They were my number 5 team in the country. If I have my ballot copied down correctly, I think they're going to be very good. I think they're going to come out to this season looking to make a statement. Um, I'm going to take Mount Union even with that 6 point margin, and I'm expecting them to come out strong. Big home tournament for them this weekend. We talked about it in our top 50 games episode, one of the great early season tournaments out there. So I'm expecting a good game, a great D3 game, one that I'll probably tune into if I have the opportunity. But I think Mount Union plus the 6 point, Mount Union minus the 6, I'm happy to take.
So unless there's a push somewhere in here, well, I guess the only one that could push that we differ on is Whitworth Mount Union. So unless that game ends 6, someone's going to end week 1 with a lead here because we have 2 that we agree on and 3 that we pick differently on.
And those out there in TV land, feel free to play along at home, make your picks as well, and let us know how you did.
Yeah, we'll be keeping track of this. We'll review the picks each week and then keep a running total throughout the season. So
Yeah, we'll definitely keep track. We have a leaderboard here. We're starting the season 0-0. But hopefully next week we'll have some data in here and I'll be able to rub it in Zach's face that I took the first week from him.
I'll wear the crown.
All right, next up is Upset Watch segment. And this week I'm putting Mary Hardin-Baylor on Upset Watch. And I kind of hate to do it because they're doing a great thing with their early season schedule. They're flying out to California for 3 games right away, November 8, November 9, and November 11, I believe. Their opponents are Claremont Mudscripts first, then Redlands, then Pomona Pitzer. I think the big matchup we're all interested in seeing is the Pomona Pitzer matchup on the 11th, 2 top 25 teams. However, I didn't list that one here because I think, especially a road game for Mary Hardin-Baylor, even though they're, what did I say, number 2 in the country by the voters. I wouldn't really consider that one a big upset against another fellow top 25 team where Pomona Pitzer is checking in at number 11. That wouldn't be a huge upset to me if Pomona Pitzer wins that game. But I'm looking at these first 2 games that Mary Hardin-Baylor could potentially lose. If you look up by the preseason ratings, Mary Hardin-Baylor was one of those teams that was 34th. The computer didn't love as much. They actually have them as a even matchup with Claremont Mudscripts. We were just looking at this before the recording here, Zach. My computer model has Claremont Mudscripts as a half-point favorite at hosting Mary Hardin-Baylor, and then against the Redlands matchup on November 9. Mary Hardin-Baylor is only a 2-point favorite there. So between those 2 games, both games that Mary Hardin-Baylor should win if you're looking at the rankings, I think that they could potentially lose one of these games here. So I'm going to put them up on upset watch even before they get to that Pomona Pitzer matchup.
Yeah, like you said, that Pomona Pitzer matchup with Mary Hardin-Baylor, it's a top 15 matchup. I think that's one of the early season games that a lot of people are looking forward to, but there's a distinct possibility that Mary Hardin-Baylor enters that game with a loss. As you went through the efficiency rating margin and the Massey rating, like these are going to be really competitive games, or figure to be, at least there. Now, maybe we'll see that the all the data that goes into the preseason ratings was way off, and Mary Hardin-Baylor more than lives up to their number 2 rating. Not saying that there's going to be a loss here, but I think this would
Yes.
be one, a couple games here that would definitely be seen as upsets that maybe people should keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And the Claremont Mudscripts game more so than the Redlands game, but you look at the dates, November 8, November 9. That Redlands game could get even closer just with it being a back-to-back. Redlands does not play the night before. So you never know how that's going to impact teams. Maybe Mary Hardin-Baylor enters that game warmed up and they're ready to go. Or, maybe they're dragging a little bit from playing the night before.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and that Redlands game, I think they're most likely to win out of all these matchups. But back to back of those 3 opponents they're playing out in California, I'm sure they're doing their preparation, but you can't prepare for all the teams all the time. So, does Redlands take a little bit of a back seat when it comes to preparation? They're on back to back, as you mentioned. I don't know. Maybe they win both these games by double digits, but I think they're games to keep an eye on. And I wouldn't be altogether shocked if they end up with an L in one of these games. It's going to be hard to win all three. They're going to play against quality competition. That's what they signed up for, I believe, when they did these games. So happy to see the schedule. Unfortunately, I think for me, when I was looking at highly ranked teams that could suffer a loss, I kept coming back to Mary Hardin-Baylor.
Yep. And just to add a little bit more commentary on this segment here. So we're not necessarily calling upsets. We're not trying to hate on top teams, but what we're doing is trying to look through some of the data to find matchups of probably top 25 teams who are going to be facing some games that might be a little bit more difficult than people are expecting, or games featuring top 25 teams against unranked teams that could be in for a little bit more of a battle than expected. So
Yep.
that's all we're doing here. We're not even going to keep score like we're doing with our picks
No.
in terms of how these are picking out, because these aren't picks. This is just a little bit just something fun to look at.
Yeah, if I had to pick winners and pick against sort of that computer margin that I just mentioned, I would be picking Mary Hardin-Baylor in both of these games. So I'm not picking against them in any stretch, but it's just as you said, games to watch out for, games that could end up going the other way. Maybe that we didn't expect to be tight, but that could be tight.
Right. We're not calling Mary Hardin-Baylor overrated. We're not hating on anyone here. It's
Way
just
too early for that.
you just decided to pick them twice here to target them a little bit.
Well, I picked them twice because it was a little bit of cheating, right? Because then if I picked the Claremont Mud Scripps game and then the Redlands game is tight, it's two games back to back against that could be tighter margins than maybe we initially think for the number 2 team in the country. So I cheated a little bit. I think most of the time I will be picking kind of one game, but it just so happens first week of the season they're out there for 3 games and 2 are back to back. So I highlighted them here. So if any of these come true or are within one possession, that I can take credit for being right, even though I kind of doubled my chances here.
We'll allow it.
We'll allow it. Mailbag.
Mail time.
You got any mail for us today, Zach?
This is another segment we just like to try to make a regular feature of the show. If you have questions, comments, anything that you would like to see or hear from us, this is a chance to get people involved, and we can tackle it on the show. The best way to get questions or comments to us is by tweeting to us at D3 Datacast on Twitter, or you can leave a comment on YouTube on this episode, and we will pick it up and make it part of the next show. So invite you to do so.
Yeah,
And
anything you think we got wrong or we overlooked, yeah, send it our way. And if for any reason you have a question or comment that you think should remain anonymous, feel free to send a direct message. Are those direct messages open on the D3 Datacast Twitter account? Do you know, Zach?
I don't know. I will check, and I will make sure that the Twitter account DMs are open and not requiring a follow or follow back.
So if you're an assistant coach looking to put another program on blast and you didn't want to have your name out there, then you can send it anonymously. Anything else before we go, Zach?
I think that covers it. I look forward to having some games to look back to in our next episode.
Yeah.
As the games get going here, it's going to be probably a long Monday as we wait for the games to start on Tuesday, and after that, it's going to come fast and furious.
Yep.
But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's always exciting because there's some teams that maybe aren't on radars right now that by the time we get into December should be, and it's fun to see those teams emerge, learn more about them, and watch some of those runs as we head into conference season and towards the tournament.
Yeah, these first couple of months of our show, we've been able to say a lot of words, but we haven't been proven wrong by any games. I'm sure that will happen pretty quickly here as games come out, and Mary Hardin-Baylor wins these games both by 40, and I get all of my picks wrong, and the computer rankings are completely off base. Then that's where everyone's going to be able to send their comments and questions for me, and that's going to be part of the fun of the show, the extra banter, the extra camaraderie we all get by enjoying when this guy's wrong.
Yeah, so just one other extra fun stat as we're getting started with the season here, I've been keeping track of all the schools that we've mentioned in all the episodes so far, and we've already hit 96. So fell just short of triple digits here, but doing the math, that comes out to about 23% of Division III has already been mentioned here. So that's a list we'll keep going, and we'll look back at the end of the season
We
and see how we did.
we probably added a couple today. Hobart probably was a new mention. I'm not sure about St. John Fisher, maybe Redlands. So maybe we added 3. We'll have to check.
Yep.
Anyway, it's been fun so far. We'll be able to get games in this week. Actually, tonight, this episode releases Monday, 12:01 a.m. WPI versus Worcester State, I believe, is the game. So we're all staying up to watch that one. Hashtag D3 Hoops on Twitter. Have a good season, everyone.
Go team.
Good job, team.